Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala, thumma amma ba'd. To proceed, like I said today, inshallah, we will try to finish the chapter on al-qasm wa nushuz, which is division and contempt. And then we'll start the chapter on khula, termination of marriage prompted by the wife. So the Sheikh said at the end of the chapter of Qasm and Nushuz, and he was talking about the case of Nushuz, whether it comes from the husband or the wife. What if the Nushuz comes from the wife? وإن خاف الرجل نشوز امرأته وعظها فإن أظهرت نشوزا هجرها في المضجع فإن لم يرضعها ذلك فله أن يضربها ضربا غير مبرح. If the man fears contempt from his wife, he should exhort her, and if she continues to show contempt, he may abandon her in bed. If that does not deter her, he may hit her lightly. Okay, so basically that's why we deferred it, because we said that we need to discuss it in some detail, and this is one of the issues that probably if you are in da'wah, particularly interfaith or whatever type of da'wah, even among Muslims, some people still have sort of not complete submission, I guess. This is verse 34 in Surah An-Nisa, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, what? الرجال قوامون على النساء بما فضل الله بعضهم على بعض فالصالحات قانتات. Yeah, we need this. وبما أنفقوا من أموالهم. الصالحات قانتات حافظات للغيب بما حفظ الله واللاتي تخافون نشوزهن فعظوهن واهجروهن في المضاجع واضربوهن فإن أطعنكم فلا تبغوا عليهن سبيلا إن الله كان عليا كبيرا. Okay. So الرجال would be men. قوامون comes from what? To stand. And qawam here means what? It means maintainer and protector, but at the same time, we said that all obligations have corresponding rights, or, So, since he is the maintainer and protector, he will be also the leader. So it is leadership and protection. So protector, leader. And this is basically leader in his household. It does not mean that every man is a leader over the woman. If you have kids, you need to teach your male child that he does not have authority over, your girls are under your authority. They're not under the authority of their male. But at one point, he will be her guardian if you're not around. In marriage, for instance, he will be her wali. And that is part of this but it does not mean that he is always a leader, like he has an authority over her. So protector and leader. على النساء over women. بما فضل الله بعضهم على بعض, because of that which Allah had favored them with. And that may be physical strength, that may be sort of, it may be, I'm not saying, it may be mental strength in certain areas, because there are sort of differences between the mental capacities. It may be that would require some studies to be done, but no one will do those studies. Anyway, Allah said, بِمَا فَضَّلَ اللَّهُ بَعْضَهُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ, because of what Allah had favored them with. Favored them with in the sense of this leadership and protection. Favored them to be the protectors, to be the qawamun. But there could be mental faculties and mental capacities that women are superior in. And there are mental capacities or faculties that women have been shown to be superior in, such as multitasking, for instance. Like the men have this inability to multitask. They get sort of subsumed in one task. They can't handle two things at a time. So that is a mental capacity that women, but when it comes to the mental capacity that is needed for this, he gave men, he favored men with whatever is needed for this, to be the protectors and the leaders. بعضهم على بعض وبما أنفقوا من أموالهم, and because of their spending. And because of their spending. فالصالحات قانتات حافظات للغيب بما حفظ الله. So قانتات here would mean obedient. Salihat would be righteous women. Hafizatul lil-ghayb, they protect their husbands or their households in their husband's absence. Protective of their honor, of their property in their absence. Bima hafidhallah, with that which Allah had, demanded to be protected. وَاللَّاتِي تَخَافُونَ نُشُوزَهُنَّ, and as for those women that you fear their nushuz, which would be contempt or rebellion, let us say contempt. فَعِظُوهُنَّ, then exhort them. وَهْجُرُوهُنَّ فِي الْمَضَاجِعِ, abandon them in bed. وَاضْرِبُوهُنَّ, and hit them. فَإِنْ أَطَعْنَكُمْ, if they obey you, فَلَا تَبْغُوا عَلَيْهِنَّ سَبِيلًا, then do not transgress or oppress them or suppress them, etc. Do not show aggression towards them. So this is the verse now. When we talk about an issue, when it is about apologetics, we said that there are three main ingredients to any apologetical response that we have to include. One of them is clarification. The other one is justification. The third one is application. So if we divide it in this sense, clarification, justification, and application. The first thing that we need to do is to clarify what is meant by this, particularly this, hit them. Okay, and in order for you to do this, we said that that our revelation, there are two concepts in our hermeneutical theory that are very important, which are intertextuality and contextuality. Intertextuality and contextuality. So you have to expand the context a little bit so that you would be able to understand what is happening here. To expand the context, you go to the beginning of the ayah. So the beginning of the ayah is talking about men being the protectors, not the abusers. So الرجال قوامون, protectors. They are standing there to take care of their women or their wives, to maintain them and to take care of them. So they have that position of leadership, but they are protectors. The other thing is that the verse talks about an extreme condition, which is nushuz, and that's rebellion or contempt. That is extreme contempt or rebellion. That is the context that this verse talks about here, or provides these. And then it provides gradual sort of action plan, and it calls for complete cessation of any measures, corrective measures, once there has been sort of, once the wife refrains from rebellion and contempt, which is nushuz. Certainly, this nushuz we're not talking about a good, nice woman here. We're talking about a rebellious woman who's acting wild, not because she's having a bad day and she's screaming, because that is basically, not unusual. You see, Umar ibn Khattab, someone came to Umar ibn Khattab and he saw that, like, he heard his wife screaming, and even, Hafsa radiallahu anha said to Umar radiallahu anhu, no, not Hafsa, Atika, I think, Umar's wife, she said to Umar radiallahu anhu, like, when he said to her, don't talk back to me, and she said to him, what are you saying? Like, even the wives of the Prophet ﷺ talk back to him, and he wondered if they do, and he went to Hafsa and he said, do you really talk back to them? She said yes. So the idea here, the idea of nushuz itself, this would be real rebellion. This would be a real sort of extreme contempt and real rebellion. Whenever the Prophet ﷺ mentioned this, the hadith of Jabir, hadith that's reported by Muslim from Jabir, about the hadith of Hajjat al-Wada', khutbat Hajjat al-Wada', the hadith of Hajj, including khutbat Hajjat al-Wada', وَلَكُمْ عَلَيْهِنَّ أَلَّا يُطِئْنَ فُرُشَكُمْ أَحَدًا تَكْرَهُونَهُ فَإِنْ فَعَلْنَ فَاضْرِبُوهُنَّ ضَرْبًا غَيْرَ مُبَرِّحٍ. And it is your right upon them that they do not allow on your furniture or your beds someone that you dislike, allow someone you dislike to sit on your furniture or your beds, because it could be this, it could be that. And if they do, then you can hit them lightly. ضربا غير مبرح, hit them lightly. Okay, so it has to be a major problem, a major offense. So that is the immediate context here, the immediate context. And while we are here, while we are in this immediate context, then why are we not translating this as beat them? Because what we have that is traceable to the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba radwanullahi alayhim, and the understanding of the Sahaba radwanullahi alayhim that they are relayed from the Prophet ﷺ is that this does not mean beat. Because he said darban ghayr mubarrih, which means lightly. And Abdullah ibn Abbas said ma yakunu bis-siwak wa nahwihi, it is with a toothbrush. And some of the scholars said hudbat al-thawb, which is this, the end of the garment. As if it is symbolic, as if it is symbolic. And this is what we have that is traceable this high to the Prophet ﷺ and to the companions. And this, so when we translate this, we have to keep this in mind, because that is what it meant. It did not mean beat, for sure. Okay, but this is only the context of this particular verse that was in the chapter of An-Nisa, the chapter that is called Women, that has all kinds of rights for women, that has all kinds of protection for women. The verse itself started by men being the protectors of women and so on. So this is not in the context of physical abuse, or as some people may do, whether they are in the East or West, or they're Muslim or non-Muslim. Has nothing to do with this. What is this? This is a permanent marker or what? What?
Of all the ayat to be written in permanent marker.
Huh?
Oh, it's wet.
So we're still here in clarification. We're just doing the clarification of this particular verse here, but we are still. So when we talk about intertextuality, then we will have to widen the context a little bit more and go to other. I'm not going to use this marker again. And go to other verses in the Quran. So in Surah Al-Rum, the overall environment in the Muslim family that has been described is this is the context. This is the larger context. The larger context, ومن آياته أن خلق لكم من أنفسكم أزواجا لتسكنوا إليها وجعل بينكم مودة ورحمة إن في ذلك لآيات لقوم يتفكرون ومن آياته أن خلق لكم من أنفسكم أزواجا لتسكنوا إليها وجعل بينكم مودة ورحمة إن في ذلك لآيات لقوم يتفكرون. And it is one of his signs that he created for you min anfusikum, from yourselves. And this is an important piece, by the way, because for some time in Europe, even in the church, there was always this discussion whether women have the same souls as men or not. And they agreed that, and this was maybe, how many centuries back? But this was not, up until 1100s and so on, the discussion was still raging whether women have human souls. Women have human souls. And they agreed that they have human souls, but the inferior. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, this min anfusikum is repeated in the Quran in several places. Of yourselves, of the same soul. So it is, that has been repeated in the Quran. You don't basically now pay much attention to it, but that was being discussed. That was a controversial issue, and the Quran is responding to it. Azwajan, which means mates, litaskunu ilayha, to indwell with them in peace and tranquility, because that is what sakan is, sakina. You remember sakina, the station of sakina? So sakan is to indwell with in peace and tranquility. Ilayha وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ, and he put between you mawadda or rahma. Mawadda is compassion, Wa rahma is what? Mercy. So why did he say Azza wa Jal mawadda wa rahma? Because mawadda is in the good times and rahma is in the bad times. You show compassion to people that you love. But even if you don't, you have to show rahmah. So it's either this or that. Mawadda is in the good times, rahmah is in the bad times. And if you go back to Surah An-Nisa itself, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says وَعَاشِرُهُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ فَإِنْ كَرِهْتُمُوهُنَّ فَعَسَىٰ أَن تَكْرَهُوا شَيْئًا وَيَجْعَلَ اللَّهُ فِيهِ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا. وَعَاشِرُهُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ, and live with them according to reason or in kindness. You could say within reason, and you could say kindly, because we said ma'ruf could actually mean both. So bil-ma'ruf means sensibly, means kindly, means both. وَعَاشِرُهُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ فَإِنْ كَرِهْتُمُوهُنَّ, and even if you dislike them, because the idea here is that not all women are righteous, good women. We have to agree on this also. So evil is not the lot of men only. Some women also are evil. So وَعَاشِرُهُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ فَإِنْ كَرِهْتُمُوهُنَّ, and if you dislike them, you may dislike a thing and Allah puts therein much good. See, there is nothing beyond this. Like, even if you dislike them, try to live with them, to give them kind companionship and to live with them kindly and sensibly, because you may dislike a thing and Allah puts therein much good. So this is the wider context. And we said that the meaning of adribuhun has been explained. Now that we are saying this, part of the clarification is to say that some of the modern scholars said adribuhun means leave them, abandon them. أفنضرب الذكر عنكم صفحة أفنضرب عنكم الذكر صفحة إن كنتم قوما مجرمين. أفنضرب عنكم الذكر صفحة, should we then turn away the dhikr, the revelation from you, that you are, because you are criminal people, or أن كنتم قوما مجرمين, because of your criminality. أفنضرب عنكم الذكر صفحة. So what does that mean? Does that mean hit the dhikr? نضرب عنكم الذكر, نضرب الذكر, does that mean beat the dhikr? No, it means turn it away, move it away from you. يضربون في الأرض يبتغون من فضل الله وآخرون يضربون في الأرض يبتغون من فضل الله. And there would be Surah al-Muzammil. وآخرون يضربون في الأرض يبتغون من فضل الله وآخرون يقتلون في سبيل الله. And others who will be يضربون في الأرض, which means that they travel through the land. So darb becomes from, could be beating or hitting, but it could also be to leave, to abandon, to walk away, stuff like that. It is important that you include this in your response, that some people said that, some contemporary researchers said that. But we are trying to clarify here the position, that the traditional position, because anyone who has taste, like proper taste in the language, will not think that this ayah actually meant to leave them or walk away, meaning walk away completely. They are saying, and some of the people who wrote on this, of the contemporary researchers, some of them are good friends of mine, by the way, and they're not really they're not really bad people. They're good people, and one of them is a professor in Azhar. And the idea here is they're saying that ihjuruhunna means abandon them in bed. Adribuhunna, leave the whole house. So just. But I guess this is new. This is not how it has been explained in the tradition by the Sahaba, because Abdullah ibn Abbas, when the Prophet ﷺ said ضربنا ضربا غير مبرح, or Abdullah ibn Abbas says ما يكون بالسواك ونحوه, they understood this to mean hit them. So you want to insert this. Why? For the people who will not be able to handle your explanation and your justification of the apparent meaning. Maybe they have a straw to hang on to until they recover and they develop more certainty, and then they become just full-blown submitters. So we're still here on the clarification, and the clarification, if we're still in the clarification, we're trying to clarify the position. This is one of the things that Qur'aniyin should have like a great difficulty with. The people who don't believe in the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, because this is the only thing that is in the Quran, and it's quite obvious. It's basically the obvious, and they always say the obvious of the thing, interpretation of the Quran and so on, and you don't need commentators, and you don't need the tradition to explain it, and you don't, okay, well, here you go. This is the Quran. If you don't want the Sunnah now to explain that this is light hitting, and if you don't want the Sunnah to explain that this is limited in extreme conditions and in this and that, then that's all you have here. But the Sunnah, in this particular case, it seems that the Prophet ﷺ, because of his nature, this is one of the things that were difficult for him. And we know that sometimes, the Quran would say to the Prophet ﷺ, you should have done it this way. Because some things, the Prophet's nature is averse to. Hitting women, the Prophet's nature is averse to it. Now, when this comes in the revelation, Allah is telling him sometimes there is a wisdom that we can explain later, even though your nature is averse to it. Because if you look at everything that came from the Prophet ﷺ in his tradition, you will find him forbidding hitting. So the one time that he's allowed it, and he said ضربا غير مبرح, was a major crime. ولكم عليهن ألا يطئن فرشكم أحدا تكرهونه فإن فعلن فاضربوهن ضربا غير مبرح. It is that your right upon them that they do not allow on your furniture or your beds someone that you dislike, and if they do, then hit them lightly. But anything else the Prophet ﷺ said about this seems to indicate that he was quite uncomfortable with this. So one time he said, بما يضرب, and this was reported by al-Bukhari, بما يضرب أحدكم امرأته ضرب الفحل ثم لعله يعانقها. بما يضرب أحدكم امرأته ضرب الفحل ثم لعله يعانقها. So why, or how come one of you يضرب, hits or beats here, أحدكم, one of you, امرأته, his wife, ضرب الفحل. ضرب is ضرب, الفحل is the stallion camel, like he beats his stallion camel. ثم لعله يعانقها, and then maybe thereafter he will embrace her, or he will have intimacy with her. So he's trying to basically highlight for them the inconsistency here, the sort of the difficulty here in this relationship. How could you beat her and then hug her? It seems, the Prophet ﷺ is saying that it's either this or that, but how do you have it in you that you beat your wife and then hug her? What kind of hugging is this? Because he is trying to highlight how emotionally disturbed this picture, or just emotionally inconsistent this picture is. And this was reported by al-Bukhari. There is a couple of hadith that are reported by others. One of them is where the Prophet ﷺ says, "La tadribu ima Allah." Don't hit the ima Allah, the servant women of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is just like a clear prohibition. La tadribu ima Allah. Do not hit the servants of Allah or the slave women of Allah. Slave women of Allah. And in the other hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, طاف بآل محمد الليلة 70 امرأة كلهن يشتكين الضرب ولا تجدون أولئك خياركم. طاف بآل محمد الليلة 70 امرأة كلهن يشتكين الضرب ولا تجدون أولئك خياركم. There had come to the wives of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam tonight 70 women. 70 is used to indicate a large number. So 70 women. All of them were complaining of hitting or beating, and you will not find those men, وَلَا تَجِدُونَ أُولَئِكَ خِيَارَكُمْ, you will not find those men to be among your best. You will not find those men to be among your best. So that is basically clarification. That is, as far as clarification is concerned. And then you move on to justification. But at the end of the day, we understand the limited circumstances, we understand light hitting, we understand that the Prophet was averse to it, but at the end of the day, why was it prescribed? Justification. And justification here, the obvious thing here is that it was basically a last resort before the complete breakdown of the family. It was another corrective measure to delay or stop the most undesirable outcome of divorce. It is another corrective measure. It is like someone who is walking next to the cliff and about to fall, jump off or fall off the cliff. And if they are about to fall off the cliff or intentionally jump off the cliff and destroy this family, there may be children involved and there may be, the stakes are high, you're likely not going to tell them, come back. You're just going to grab them and pull them back. It will look violent when you're trying to grab them off the cliff. It does look violent. You may actually beat them. You may actually, wrestle them down because they're jumping off the cliff. So it seems that it is a last corrective measure after فَعِظُوهُنَّ وَهْجُرُوهُنَّ فِي الْمَضَاجِعِ. Last corrective measure. So last corrective measure. But from what the Prophet ﷺ said, it seems that it is not prescribed for all women, and it is not done by all men. It seems that it is very culture and class dependent as well. It's just like culturally dependent. It is not basically something that would be prescribed for all women, and it is not something that is done by all men. Because the Prophet ﷺ himself never did it. The Prophet ﷺ himself forbade people from doing it. The Prophet ﷺ himself said, وَلَا تَجِدُونَ أُولَٰئِكَ خِيَارَكُمْ. You will not find those men to be among your best. So the cultural factor here is important because not all people are, they have the same sort of not all people have the same norms, the same customs, and the same sort of feelings toward these things. It may be, hitting some women may be so devastating and detrimental to the relationship that it would be best if you move from abandonment in bed to divorce. Skip that particular sort of measure, because if you use it, it may be even more devastating to the relationship, that it will make it end on sour and like bad terms. So just skip and move to the next, which is divorce. So the cultural factor has to be, so last corrective measure, and last corrective measure needs to be sort of forceful. And the cultural factor is involved here. Now, part of the justification is also to say, so why are we not allowing women to do the same thing? If there's a last corrective measure and you want to avoid the eventuality of divorce and bring people from the cliff, from the edge of the cliff, so why can't she do the same thing? Why can't she beat him? Why is it not prescribed for him? Well, because of logistical difficulties. Because it may not be possible, and it may not be also in her best interest to do it. But keep in mind that the Dusuqi, rahimahullah, who is a great Maliki scholar, did write explicitly that if he beats her or hits her, she can take him to court, and then he would be beaten for her. So, like if he, so that they talked about beating him also, but they did not tell her to go ahead and beat him because that may be unsafe for her. But they said that she could go to court and then he would be beaten for her. So, yes.
Does that apply even with the miswak or not? Like if you were to just tap her with the miswak?
Once you get to court, they will not beat you with the miswak, I guess. Because no, when you but because you should beat with you should hit with the miswak, and I'm not saying you should hit, but that is what is prescribed. If she takes you to court, they don't have that much masawik. They have slugs, they have sticks, and they have their own tools in those places. But anyway, so the cultural factor. So, but this is so reciprocation. We talked about reciprocation here in that context. There is, to some degree, reciprocation. But then, okay, so now we're saying that this is light hitting. It's almost symbolic. It is it was forceful, symbolically forceful, because you're trying to bring someone from the edge of the cliff and you're trying to prevent them from falling off or jumping off the edge of the cliff. But at the end of the at the end of the day, the question is, did this legislation or this verse contribute to the abuse that we are seeing among Muslims? Did the verse contribute? Okay, because you can say as much as you want, but it does not seem that Muslims are abiding by this. It seems that Muslims violate all of these regulations and all of the nice talk. It seems that Muslims violate it. So did the verse contribute to what is happening? Okay, certainly, as a Muslim, you certainly, the natural thing is that you can't accuse Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala of injustice as a Muslim, but in order for you to do apologetics, you will need to come from a point of impartiality, because the person that is listening to you does not believe in the authority of the Quran, does not believe that it came from God. You can't just simply tell them absolutely not, but tell me how. Explain to me. So the idea here is that sinners are usually not waiting for validation before they commit their sin. They always look for validation retrospectively. So no, it did not contribute, because in other societies and other cultures where certainly, I have like an answer, I think I have the answer on my website, and I quote all of the verses in the Bible that are pertinent to here, and you could go over them, because that is part of this, part of doing apologetics is to say, "Ma kuntu bid'an min ar-rusul." I was not something new among the messengers, or any different from the rest of the messengers. So part of this is to bring the biblical precedents. But in the Bible, for instance, if a woman is gets married to if a man gets married to a woman and does not find her virgin, then he will stone her to death. We don't have this. We even have where Aisha even said that virginity is something that can be lost by like a jump or like a trauma or something of that nature. We don't actually consider the loss of virginity to be an indication of immorality whatsoever. So, but anyway, that's what you will need to say here is that 1 out of 4 women in the U.S., with all the protections and all the laws and everything, 1 out of 4 men in the U.S. will be subject to domestic abuse based on the coalition on domestic abuse and violence. 1 out of 4 women. That is huge. That's the 1 out of 4 will be subject to domestic abuse. And the numbers I may have I shared the numbers with you, some of the numbers with you, right? In the note that I sent you. So you just go over those numbers. And then certainly you could look them up online, could look up at the sort of the rates of homicide, women that are killed by relatives and so on. You don't need my numbers, you could just Google them yourself. So no, it is not true that the verse itself contributed, because sinners, whether they are Muslim or not Muslim, or East or in the East or West, they are moved by their sort of biases, by their aggression, by their wickedness, and so on. And then they look for validation or vindication thereafter. And certainly they will not find vindication in this verse based on everything that we said and based on the explanation that we said. They will not find any vindication in this verse. So now we come to the last point here, which is what? The point of application. Okay, so since, and this is where there will be a lot of disagreement here. How do we apply this? And certainly the majority would say it will remain the way it always was, as basically a corrective measure to be implemented sometimes in certain scenarios, in certain cases, by certain men with certain women. So it is not a generalized sort of prescription for everyone. It's culturally dependent, and that's it. And we will continue to say that it means light hitting after all corrective measures failed to basically prevent the marriage from dissolution, and also certain men, certain women, all the above. Some are saying, some of the scholars said that when a particular law or when a particular instruction is understood or misapplied, you could actually put restrictions on it. Because keep in mind, Allah is not making this an obligation so that you cannot put a restriction on it. Allah is making this an option. So when something is optional, can you put restrictions on it? Some are saying that لا يقدس الله أمة لا يأخذون للضعيف حقه. لا يقدس الله أمة لا يأخذون للضعيف حقه. This is what the Prophet ﷺ said. Allah will not sanctify a nation that does not protect, procure, claim, defend, protect the rights of the poor, the weak. So if Allah does not sanctify a nation, and we do know that men have become, just like Umar imposed the 3 divorces on men when they were being like sort of hasty and abusive of the 3 divorce, or was given like 3 divorce pronouncements. They're saying that if we see that men are violating the teachings of the Quran and they are not abiding by the guidelines, that we may ban hitting. We may ban hitting, and in this way we will be restricting a mubah, not contradicting or not, not repealing laws. We are restricting a mubah. And taqyid al-mubah, or the restriction of mubah, is within the capacity of the sultan, the authorities. Taqyid al-mubah, or restriction of the mubah, is within the capacity of the authorities, and that is what the Shaykh ibn Ashur and others like him, but he's the most prominent and first to actually say this, and he was a great scholar, Tunisian scholar, who has a great tafsir book called Tafsir ibn Ashur, one of the best tafsir books ever written. So that's as far as application is concerned, and whether or not you agree with this take, but it is out there and you want to include it in your response if you're doing apologetics. That brings us to the end of this discussion, which took the whole, 45 minutes, maybe a little less. And we only have 7 minutes, so we are not going to start the chapter on khula today, and we will defer it until next time. But since we are doing apologetics, we did not talk about ta'addud al-zawjat, polygyny. And this was the chapter, this was the relevant chapter, which was the chapter on al-qasm wa nushuz, or division between co-wives, and nushuz, which is contempt. So ta'addud al-zawjat, and the first thing that you want to say when it comes to ta'addud al-zawjat is that ma kuntu bid'an min ar-rusul. I was not any different from the messengers. People are so very unreal. If you're reading in your Bible that Ibrahim had many wives, and Yaqub had many wives, and Dawood had many wives, and Sulaiman had many wives, and so on, and whether or not you call them prophets, at least they are, in some sense, messengers. They convey the message from God to man. Psalms, the songs, it's part of your Bible. Don't call them, you call him King David, that's fine. But did you trust him to relay a message to you from God, and you put that message in the Bible? Yes. So whether you call him prophet or king, that's your problem. He was a prophet for sure. But at least from your perspective, he's a messenger who relayed a message from God. And it is not limited to him. It's pretty much everyone. It's pretty much everyone. So that you start there, and you also add to this is that Islam was the first to put a cap. Islam was the first to put a cap, the cap of the 4 wives. And then you could certainly get into your Encyclopedia Biblica, and you could have historically, the Jews and for how long the Jews continued to have polygynous relationships, and some of the Christians also in different cultures and different places, and so on and so forth. So you may want to start there. So this is nothing new about Islam, except the cap. The only thing that's new about Islam is the restriction. It limited it to 4. Before that, none of the scriptures talked about any restriction or limitation. Now, having said that, the second thing that you want to say is that we don't know of any monogamous nations, because it is either polygamous and halal or polygamous and haram. But this idea of purely monogamous, no. People who condemn polygamy all the time are the people who have, the sort of the largest rates of infidelity. So the cultures that find polygamy to be most abhorrent and repulsive are the same cultures that have much, and before, you could, the hypocrisy of people is just astounding. Certainly before their scandals will come out in the open, they would be the most sort of aggressive in critiquing polygamy, when they're having multiple relationships, secretive relationships, with mistresses who have no rights whatsoever, and sort of feel demoralized. And then that is really extreme justice to those injustice to those women. So this is the second thing after ma kuntu bid'an min ar-rusul, and biblical precedent is to talk about no, we're not. When it comes to compare Egypt, for instance, and Egypt and France, you will find a lot more people, a lot more men having polygamous relationships in France than Egypt. So then you talk about why was it legislated? Why was it permitted in the first place by God in any of the religions, in all of the religions? Why was it permitted? And you have the answers. That's why I didn't discuss polygamy, because it seems that this is one of the issues that people are most versed and most aware of. Okay, so one of the things, when it comes to polygamy, one of the things is that at a larger scale, it is basically the ratio of men to women. Often the ratio of men to women is in favor of women. There are more women than men. And in order for you to protect the interest of those women to have their rights fulfilled, to have their needs fulfilled, you need to legislate polygamy. After World War II, there were women protesting in the streets asking for the legalization of polygamy. You know that the Senate in Utah legalized it recently, a couple of weeks ago. Polygamy has been legalized by the Senate in Utah a couple of weeks ago. I know for how long this will last, but at any rate, there were women after World War II who were asking for the legalization of polygamy. And that because men die in wars, and because usually the ratio, there will be surplus of women, and those women have rights, and they need the rights to be fulfilled, and they need the rights to be fulfilled without being demoralized, without feeling that they are mistresses. They just want to feel as legitimate partners. So that was the ratio issue. That is at a much larger scale. And then if you come to the individual, at the individual level, and because of the sort of the hegemony of feminism nowadays, it is, you want to always justify things from the perspective of the women, because this is where the attack is coming from, against organized religion, against all religions, against tradition, because it seems that feminism wants to rewrite sort of all the history and conventions and norms and customs and everything. And I'm not condemning feminism as a blanket sort of condemnation of all feminism, because as we said before, we don't fight with terminology. If feminism is against oppression, we are against oppressing women. If feminism is against discrimination, we are against discrimination. If feminism says, equal pay for equal work, we are all for equal pay for equal work, because it's injustice otherwise. So, but certainly there are rogue elements within that movement that are completely just out of their mind. So going back from the women's perspective, like I know a case of like this. I personally know a case like this, and then you can also generalize from this case. Like a brother who got married to a sister, and a few months after their marriage, she was found to have stage 4 cancer. And she was very quickly unable to fulfill any of his needs. And his parents and his family told him to divorce her and marry another woman. So if your wife gets diagnosed with cancer, like you are as a young man, and your wife gets diagnosed with cancer a few months into the marriage, what would be the best option here? Let's say that she will live for 10 years, and sometimes that can happen, 15 years, but she will be unable to fulfill any of your needs. Not cancer, multiple sclerosis, anything, quickly. What would be the best option for this man? You could always say that he needs to be dutiful and to help his wife, serve his wife forever, and sort of forget about his biological needs, forget about anything, and just serve his wife. Most men will not be able to do that. It's not going to be possible for most men. So should he have listened, and he consulted me, by the way, and should he have listened to his parents who said, divorce her, Allah will take care of her, you're not God, Allah is more merciful. They're not bad people. It's not like they hate her or anything, but they're saying that you're a young man, you need to have a family, you did not get married for this. So Allah will take care of her, her family will take care of her, she'll go back to her family, they'll look after her, they'll take care of her, and so on. So I don't think that this is the best sort of behavior or response to this tragedy. That is one of the cases where polygamy would certainly shine as an alternative to staying and depriving himself of all of his needs, or walking away and returning her to her family to take care of her.
What about the other way?
Huh?
What about the other way? If he has cancer,
Yeah, I was going to say.
Well-
multiple sclerosis, then what happens?
Well, if he has cancer or multiple sclerosis, then she can always ask for divorce. She can always ask for divorce, because if he is unable to fulfill her needs, that is, as we will say in the chapter of Khula, there are, in the Hanbali method, for instance, there are certain things that you could, that you would be granted divorce for without needing Khula, without giving up any of your rights. So one of them is what? I'sar, unable to maintain her, insolvency. One of them is what? العيوب التي تفسخ النكاح. So, defects or defects that constitute a cause for the annulment of the marriage, even if they arise after the marriage. Even if they arise after marriage. One of them, what? Unexcused absence. One of them, what? Ila, which is the oath of abandonment after 4 months. So these are 4 different causes that would get her a divorce, not a khula, a divorce, a court-enforced divorce. Okay. But then you would say, so why can't she keep more than one man? Why is there no reciprocation here? Why are we saying that she? Because that would not work. Because anyone in his right mind understands that this is ahistorical. This is, and if it happened in the history, it is extremely rare, and it is not. It's just not sensible. Everybody understands this. And, all women would understand, it is just not in them to basically keep multiple partners at the same time. So that's another reason, basically when the wife is unable to fulfill the needs of the man. But this can extend also, and we will get into more controversy here. But sometimes the wives become disinterested in this stuff. Sometimes after some time, the wives at a certain sort of phase or they just become disinterested before their men become disinterested, particularly when they have kids and so on, and then all of their attention is on their kids, and then their kids grow up, and they just get disinterested in that whole thing, the marital relationships. And they are like Sauda, she was not just interested in that part of it. And they just want it for the companionship. But the man really is still interested in this stuff. And that would be another reason for the legislation when the wife loses interest. And the man feels that his needs are not fulfilled. Okay, and then but you don't need to go with me all the way down, because we have enough already. We're done. Case made. We're done. If you're still with me, that's fine. If I lost you, it's fine too, because we're done long time ago. Now, what if the man really just has like extra virility, has shabak jinsi, etc. What do we tell him in this case? There are those men that just, to them, this is a big deal. They're just very focused on this. You just can't take their mind off of it. And what if they feel that their needs are not fulfilled, are not met, are not satisfied? Is it better for women that those men go out and have a second wife or a third wife? Or is it better even for the first wife that her husband is married to a second woman? And any righteous woman really will say, will basically have the right answer to this. Because if a woman says that, no, I would rather my husband to go out and have haram relationship with mistresses, then she does have a problem. It's an egotistic response. It is not a God-fearing response. But anyway, this is also something that is there. But if you don't agree with this one, you have many others, many other justifications for this legislation. We did talk about needs, and we also, sterility also is one of these things when, like if the woman does not really conceive. And we said, Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah said, if the man does not conceive, that is a defect, and that's a wajh in the Hanbali madhab. If the man does not conceive, that is a defect that would justify for a woman an annulment, a divorce, an annulment, fasakh, termination that is considered annulment. Why? Because, like I said, a woman having multiple partners will never work. We don't need even to spend time on sort of refuting that possibility. But if the woman, so she will ask for divorce because it is a need, motherhood is a need, having a child is a need. For the man, we would just tell him, don't divorce your wife, stay with your wife. It's unkind to divorce her because she doesn't have kids. But if you really need to have children, then that is where polygamy has been legislated for. Finally, when the laws forbid polygamy, when it is unlawful, then we discourage people. We can't say haram to something that Allah made halal. We cannot do this, but we do discourage people from it when it is not legal because of the harm that will ensue, the harm that they will bring about, not only to themselves, but also to their community, if their community is perceived as a non-law-abiding community. قولوا قولي هذا استغفر الله لي ولكم سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك اشهد ان لا اله الا انت استغفرك واتوب اليك.